Welcome to Recalibrate. This is a podcast of Caribou Road Christian Fellowship. Our hope is to create a moment where you get to take a look at your life through the lens of Christ's teaching and recalibrate.
Well, welcome back to Recalibrate. We're continuing with our journey into the letter of James. Now remember last time we talked, I don't like to always go over what we did last time, but it was important to remember that it's this letter from James, the brother of Jesus, who is now the leader of the church in Jerusalem. And he's writing this letter to these churches that have suddenly sprung up because there's been persecution in Jerusalem and all the Christians have spread out all over the place. And they have started new communities of faith all over the region of Judea, right through to Syria, and actually even further into the Roman Empire. Brand new churches from these refugees who were escaping the persecution that had started in Jerusalem. That's who James is writing to. In fact, I was thinking about it the other day, Peter, and he had that time when he had that vision as he was resting on the roof. Well, that's why Peter was not in Jerusalem. He had also had to escape the persecution. And where he had that vision was in Joppa, which is on the coast, quite a long way away from Jerusalem. He was hiding. And then God gave him a vision. And he went to the Gentile centurion. And they got baptized in the Holy Spirit. They got saved, this Gentile family. And that was the beginning of the Gentiles coming in. God's plan is amazing, isn't it? So I know I'm way off track here, but I just want you to follow all the stuff I just said because there's so much. James, who writes this letter, is leading the church in Jerusalem. He's the brother of Jesus. History says that he was very respected by the people in Jerusalem, and that's probably why he was the leader, because even the Jewish religious leaders who were persecuting the church actually respected James. And so he was leading the church now because Peter and John and the other apostles had to flee into the countryside and even further away, even into other countries, into other areas where Herod didn't have reign. Herod Antipas didn't have reign over that area, and they wouldn't be persecuted. And so, but what God was actually doing was taking the gospel from just being a Jewish faith in Jerusalem and forcing it. It was starting now to go further out. And Peter was there, and he went to the coast further away, and he had a vision there, and he, following that vision, went and led a number of Gentiles to the Lord. And that was the beginning of Gentiles coming into the faith. At that same time, Paul the Apostle, who was at that time a Jewish religious leader, he was actually going to Damascus, where another one of these churches had sprung up from Jews escaping the persecution, Jewish Christians escaping the persecution. He was going to Damascus to persecute those Christians, right? It's all interrelated. And then he, as a vision, gets converted. And then as a result of his ministry, the gospel even goes to Rome and into the rest of the world. So this persecution in Jerusalem was God ordained because it was an opportunity for the gospel to move beyond being a Jewish sect, a part of Judaism, and actually become a faith for the Gentiles as well. And through the theology of Paul given to him by Christ, even our understanding of what it means to be a Christian changed. It's really amazing stuff. I'm so far off course, and I hope that is I'm not lost you in that. But it's pretty amazing stuff that's going on here in this epistle of James, how God is at work. And that's why I always say in this issue of pandemics, people often ask, Pastor, what is the Lord doing? What do you think's going on? And it's hard to discern often, but I will say that, there is a purpose in this. God is at work in this. And what we can't see in the natural, he's actually doing. I mean, I don't know. I know one thing, churches are really better at spreading the gospel online, which is a way more effective way for reaching people in this generation. And a lot of churches who, up to this stage, maybe were pretty weak in their online presence and their video recordings, what have you, are now really good at it. And the gospel is probably going out further and more than it's ever gone before. I actually envision seeing, I'm way off track, but I actually envision seeing little churches starting in houses You know, in the West, we've always tried to start house church movement, but I actually see that there's potential to start house church movement now more than ever before, in that, you know, many of us now are used to watching church at home in front of our TV. Now, what if you invited your neighbor who's not a believer and the restrictions have diminished? What if you invited them to watch with you and a friend to watch? They'd come because they have a relationship with you. And actually, you could start a church right there in your home. So I'm just saying that who knows what God is doing through this pandemic? Obvious things we'll never know. But just like the people in Jerusalem faced persecution, even though the church was doing so well, but God wanted to push them out, push the gospel out into the world. So I think even in this pandemic, God is at work. Wow, that's a lot of stuff that I've given to you in a very, very short space of time. And I hope that wasn't too overwhelming for you. So that's the background to where we are today. James has written this letter, and that's why he starts off talking about trials. Because as we've already mentioned, in this whole diaspora, this refugee crisis with the Jewish Christians, many problems came up. They were facing many difficulties. Some of them had to flee without their money. Some of them, they'd lost their homes. Some of them, had to leave and it had effect on their health, and they had to take maybe the elderly with them, and so on and so forth. And so there were so many problems, and James is saying, guys, I know that you're going through various trials as a result of what's going on, but I don't want those trials to destroy your faith. And so he says, first thing is, I want you to always lead with joy. And we've looked at that, how important it is to draw from the well of joy that is within us, and thanksgiving, and to make that the emotion and the attitude that we deal with in everything we face. And then he goes on from there, and because of time we're not going to get too much into this, but I do want to just kind of get us thinking about this. From there, he says, okay, you're going through trials and you're facing lots of problems, and I know you're getting overwhelmed by it, and you're not sure, like you've got so many decisions to make, so many things to do. And so I know that you really need God to help you. So this is what he says. He says, now listen also, as you have an attitude of joy, verse 5, if any of you lack wisdom, they should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to them. But when they ask, they must believe and not doubt, because the person who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not think they'll receive anything from the Lord, for they are double-minded, unstable in all that they do. He is telling the people that, as they walk in an attitude of joy in these trials, faith in these trials, they should feel comfortable asking God for wisdom. They should ask the Lord and have no hesitancy that God is more than willing to direct them and guide them. I think that's absolutely fantastic. What a beautiful promise. That when we go through trials and when we go through tribulations, James is giving us an explicit promise that we are allowed to go. And in fact, he encourages us to go to the Father and ask for wisdom about what to do, and the Father will give us wisdom. He will show us. He will give us guidance. He will give us discernment about the situations that we are facing. He says, in fact, I don't want you to go with a double-mindedness. I don't want you to go and ask for wisdom in your situation and think that maybe God won't answer you, that it's not that important to God, or that he can't answer you, or the situation's so difficult, there really is no wisdom. No, James says, come on, ask God for help, guidance in these issues that you're facing, like money and health and family and issues in the church, whatever it is. I want you to go and ask God in the midst of your trials for wisdom about how to navigate them and how to get through them. And I want you to go boldly. I don't want you to be double-minded about it. I don't want you to think that God won't answer. I don't want you to think that it's not important enough for God. I want you to bring the issues you're facing and ask God for wisdom and guidance how to get through it. This concept of wisdom is drawing heavily from the Old Testament. James is Jewish, and I think more than maybe all the other apostles, he strikes me as being the most traditionally Jewish. That's probably why he was the leader in the church in Jerusalem, because he was most comfortable in the Jewish world, the Jewish way of thinking, the Jewish culture. And wisdom is a huge concept in the Old Testament. This book of James is often called the Proverbs of the New Testament, the book of wisdom for the New Testament. And it's very much correlated to the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, there are a number of books of wisdom. Proverbs is one of them, and Ecclesiastes is another one, and Job is another book of wisdom. And they deal with hugely different issues. They give a very well-rounded perspective on what wisdom is and how wisdom works. It's not just one simple kind of wisdom. But Proverbs is very much the part of wisdom where cause and effect. If you do this, this is what will happen. And if you don't do this, this is what will happen. And Proverbs is a book that really encourages people that God, you can actually navigate life, that there is cause and effect in this world, that there are ways to do things that will bring prosperity and ways to do things that won't bring prosperity. And Proverbs urges you, the writer of Proverbs urges us to pursue wisdom. In fact, it personifies wisdom. It actually gives wisdom a personality. It actually speaks of it in the feminine, which is really exciting. That wisdom in the Bible is got a feminine quality to it, and all the ladies out there and women out there are saying, "Amen." We knew it. We knew we were the wise ones. So in the book of Proverbs, it compares folly, unfortunately a woman as well, but to the wise woman, and tells us to not pursue the harlot, to not pursue the unwise woman that leads us into worshipping the wrong things, but to follow the wisdom, the godly wisdom, and she will lead us into righteousness. I'll just give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. He says, "My son, accept my words," Proverbs chapter 2, store them in your hearts within you. So he's talking about get wisdom and store it up. Learn what it is. Go through the book of Proverbs and learn all these sayings, because you'll learn that this saying works in this situation and this saying works in that situation. Turn your ear to wisdom and apply it in your heart. And if you call out for insight, did you hear that? If you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. Man, that is James is essentially directly quoting from the book of Proverbs. And if you want to read about the feminine quality about wisdom, you can go on to chapter 4 and so on. You'll read how it's personified. So I love it talks about wisdom, that we should pursue it like somebody would pursue gold or somebody would pursue silver. And I don't know exactly the imagery the writer had in mind, but I just think of somebody going with a metal detector or a pick and shovel looking for X marks the spot on a map and traveling around the world to find that treasure. It's the idea of making it a life pursuit to know wisdom. And that's what James says. He says, listen, if any of you lacks wisdom, let them ask God. And when he says ask God, he's not talking about a one-time ask. He's talking about it as in the book of Proverbs, seeking it like you would seek gold, seeking it like you would seek silver, making it a life pursuit to get wisdom. And that as it said in Proverbs, we can find it. God is willing to give us discernment, willing to give us understanding in even those difficult times and difficult situations that come about because of the difficult times. God gives us wisdom. In our businesses that are really struggling because of the changes, God gives wisdom. In the interrelational problems, interpersonal problems that come up at home because we're all stuck together, God can give us wisdom. In the things at work that are so much more complicated, God gives wisdom. For the church trying to navigate and move forward, God gives wisdom to those who pursue it, to those who seek for it, for those who boldly ask God. And I think maybe that's just the simple thing I want you to know today, is that what James is saying is, and what Proverbs, he's just repeating what Proverbs teaches, that God does actually give wisdom. And that if you seek him, even in the mundane, he can show you how to get through it. Now, I want to warn you that he says, seek it like silver, seek it like gold. And it's really important to understand that when you seek for gold and silver, it's not a quick process. It's not instant riches. If you were going to dig for gold, like mine for it, you got to dig through a lot of dirt before you get to the gold. You got to put a lot of effort in before you get the nuggets. And it's the idea that when we say seek the Lord for wisdom, I really want to encourage you that God will show you wisdom in any situation, but it will take work in prayer. It will take diligently coming daily and seeking God on that issue and bringing it before the Lord daily. And then in the right time and the right way, God will give you wisdom. I think the issue is we don't really seek God's wisdom like a person would seek for gold. We are very flippant about it. We're very lazy about it. But what if you brought those issues, like your future steps at university or whatever, and you brought it to the Lord continually on a daily basis, digging for the gold, digging for the wisdom. And God, in time, he promises he will show you exactly what you should do. He will guide you very, very clearly. And I believe that. I have seen that in my life. When I have really taken time over an issue and sought God again and again, he comes through so clearly, and I know that the decision I'm going to make, that's a God decision. God's behind it because I've dug for it like I dig for gold. Well, there's a lot of stuff there, and we have really gone for it today. So the Lord bless you. We're going to continue with a little bit more wisdom on our Thursday episode. And come on, let's remember some of the things we're learning. Number one, choose joy. Remember that? Choose joy. Whatever you do today, choose joy. And then number two, let's dig for wisdom. Let's, like a miner digs for gold, let's dig for wisdom. Seek God for wisdom, because no matter what you're facing, he can give you the solution. He can give you the guidance that you need, even in your family relationships. The Lord bless you.
We want to thank you for joining us on Recalibrate today. For more information, please check out our website at crcfchurch.com.
Let your kingdom come, let your will